Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Turbocharger or supercharger. Then you have reciprocating piston supercharger. So there is a cam, and then there is a follower, and there is a flexible strip which can move up and down. So when it moves down, vacuum is created, air comes in, and then when it goes up, compression happens, pressure is generated, and then this valve opens at a particular pressure and goes out. So this is also a positive displacement supercharger, because every revolution supercharges the same volume of the air. Okay. They compress the air by taking in large volume and forcing it into a small area. These designs are effective but very expensive to use in the passenger cars, and they are generally, this kind of superchargers are used in racing cars, because in racing cars you don't worry about cost and you don't worry about life, right. As long as they last one race, you are okay, and they should do their job properly. But in a car which you want to own, I mean you don't want any component to fail before the entire car fails, right. You want it to last something like 200-300,000 kilometers, and you don't want components to fail. So this is not a good supercharger for that kind of application, but for racing cars, yes, it's a good option. Similarly, if you look at a very high level, if you look at Lysholm compressor, so this is the male screw and this is the female screw. You can see it now better, and these are meshed actually. Okay. So the air is admitted at one end of the compressor and trapped between the helical rotors and the casing. The screw action of the rotor displaces the air radially. The Lysholm compressor produces a constant compression, and this compression is produced internally, unlike Roots blower. So here the compression is happening right inside it, when the compression only occurs at the exhaust. So in the Roots blower, compression happens only at the opening, but here it is happening internally. The main disadvantage of this compressor is the mechanical complexity. So it's not a very simple compressor. Okay. So because of the mechanical complexity, it has very limited use. So it is not used very extensively. Nevertheless, it is also one option available to you if you can handle the complexity. Then I showed you one example of vane type compressor. So vane type compressor, as you can see, this is one physical device and this is just a schematic. So basically what you see here, this is the shaft, and this is the rotor, and this is the casing, and these are the vanes actually. And these vanes are very different. I mean, in the bottom there is a spring. So basically this spring will always like to keep this vane attached to the outer casing. So you can see here the spring is there, it will keep it always in touch. So basically the idea is that when the air is taken in, this air will be compressed between the outer casing, the inner casing, this vane and this vane. It will not allow the leakage. Okay. So if the air comes in, right now this will be this inlet port is open to this. Okay. So there is a lot of volume, then it moves and some compression happens, then more compression happens, and when more compression happens, higher pressure will be generated, and this high pressure air will go out, and then expansion starts, and then again you take in more air in. So this is also a positive displacement rotary type compressor. It consists of a rotor rotating in a large cylindrical casing, and you can see that the axis of this outer cylinder and this rotor, they are not the same. So it is eccentric. If it is in the center, then it will not do any compression. Okay. The rotor has 4 slots. It is not necessary to have 4 slots. You can have more if you want, but generally it has 4, which remain in contact with the casing at least one point at a time. So this entire length, there will be a line which will maintain contact. Okay. The axis of the rotor is mounted eccentrically. So this is how the rotary type blower actually works, or rotary type supercharger actually works. Okay. So, this can also be bolted on. Next is the centrifugal supercharger. So here it's only a device which is connected to the shaft of the engine. So there may be some pulley arrangement on that side. It will rotate this. So the air will enter centrally, okay, basically axially, and then through this impeller you will get kinetic energy. So the air will start rotating, and then you increase the cross sectional area. The air enters the hub of the impeller axially and it is turned 90 degree. So basically when it moves, it has to turn 90 degree by the radial vanes. These are the radial vanes. High velocity is imparted by the air due to centrifugation action. This is rotating, so high velocity is imparted. High velocity from the tip of the radial vanes is passed to a diffuser. So as soon as the air gets high velocity, this air is passed into this diffuser, and diffuser will have continuously increasing cross sectional area. Okay. So diffuser volute where the pressure is raised and air is supplied to the engine. So by the time it comes, you have desired boost level. Okay. The centrifugal compressors runs at very high speed. So if you are using a low speed engine and you want a centrifugal compressor, that compressor will be operating at 10 to 15,000 RPM. And if you want a compressor for high speed engine, you need 15 to 30,000 RPM. Okay. Can you tell me what will be the speed of typical turbocharger, automotive size turbocharger?
Close to 1 lakh.
That's right. So it could operate anywhere between 50,000 RPM to 2 lakh RPM, depending on what is the load and speed, depending on how much exhaust gas is flowing through it. So centrifugal compressor is simple, small, cheap, and it has reasonably good efficiency in the range of pressure ratio from 1.5 to 3. Pressure ratio means outlet pressure by inlet pressure, which are commonly used for supercharging. So this is quite suitable. Okay. So this is how actually a centrifugal compressor looks like, centrifugal turbocharger looks like. So there will be pulley, which will be connected by a belt drive to the engine crankshaft. Then there will be some gears, because you have to operate it at very high RPM, up to 30,000 RPM. Engine crankshaft will be rotating at 1 to 3,000 RPM maximum, 5,000 RPM. So RPM has to be increased. So that is increased by this appropriate gearing mechanism. Okay. And then there is impeller, and there is a housing, and then there is lubrication also, because everything needs to be lubricated. It is rotating at a very fast speed. So the air is drawn into the hub of the impeller by centrifugal forces. The air leaves the impeller at high speeds. Diffuser converts high speed low pressure air into low speed high pressure air. Air molecules slow down when they hit the vanes, which reduces the velocity of the airflow and increases the pressure. Centrifugal superchargers are the most efficient and most commonly used forced induction systems, particularly for engine applications. They are small, they are lightweight, and attached to the front of the engine instead of a top. So it's very easy to attach. So you can attach it on the front of the engine where the crankshaft is. Okay. So this is how the centrifugal supercharger works. Now these are some of the typical characteristic curves of centrifugal compressors. So this is the characteristic curve of a Roots blower. This is the characteristic curve of a centrifugal compressor. Those of you who will be going into join a company like ABB or something, then these kind of curves are extremely important for them. Okay. So this is for Roots blower, this is for centrifugal compressor. I will explain what this is. So the maximum adiabatic efficiency is higher than Roots blower for the centrifugal compressor. Maximum efficiency of the Roots blower is around 55%. Here it can go up to 70%. The pressure ratio varies with the square of the speed for the centrifugal compressor, and the high efficiency range operation of the pressure ratio remains substantially constant while the volume changes. So here you see here in these curves, this is air mass flow rate in kilogram per second. What's the mass that you need? This is the pressure ratio, and this is the efficiency. And here you have speed 140 revolutions per second. This is the speed 120, 100, 80, and this is the efficiency. So if you are within this envelope, you are 55% efficiency. Within this envelope, 50%. larger you go 40%, 30% and like that. Here this is 80%, 68%, 65%, okay, and these are the speeds and this is the pressure ratio. So this is exactly opposite to the positive displacement compressor in which volume flow remains substantially constant, but pressure ratio does not change. This makes centrifugal compressors unattractive for automotive applications. Okay, so centrifugal compressors are not very suitable for automotive applications. The limited speed range of the compressor makes it suitable for constant speed type engines. So centrifugal compressors are more suitable for say genset engine, where speed is not changing, or for aircraft engines. So these are suitable for that applications, but not for variable speed engines, because they don't like frequent changes in the speed. Okay. Let's look at the effect of supercharging on the performance of the engine. What happens to the power output? So this is the supercharged ratio here from 1 to 6, and this is the, actually here you should ignore the efficiency, it doesn't seem to be correct. So ignore this curve, just look at this curve. So this is the power output. So you can see as you increase the pressure ratio up to a certain ratio, the pressure ratio, the power output actually increases. But it is not that you keep on increasing the pressure ratio and power will keep on increasing. At a certain level you peak the power, and then beyond that the power output starts falling. Okay. So the power output of a supercharged engine is higher than its naturally aspirated counterpart due to the following reasons. First reason is that the amount of air injected per cycle at a given swept volume increases. So you have more air, so you can put in more amount of fuel. Then second, why it increases is during the gas exchange process, some of the work done on the supercharger is recovered. So when the gas exchange is happening, some of that work, in gas exchange what happens? When we say gas exchange, what is happening? During the exhaust, the piston is pushing, right, and you have to provide extra power to push the piston, right, and then exhaust goes out. Now the fresh air comes in and you have to suck it. Now in the naturally aspirated condition, the piston has to be forced by the power of the engine itself, right, and in this case when you have a turbocharger, the air is also at a higher pressure. So air actually will start working during the intake stroke as well. So that is why part of the work that you are doing in the compression, part of it is recovered in the intake stroke or gas exchange process as we call it. Supercharging results in better scavenging. What is scavenging? Scavenging is basically forcing out the exhaust by the fresh air when there is valve overlap. In the engine there is always some valve overlap. So when the fresh air is coming at a higher pressure, obviously it will flush out more amount of residual gases, right. So you will have less amount of residual gases left in the engine, and it will clean most of the burned gases. So it results in better scavenging, and it will reduce the exhaust gas temperature, because now the intake temperature will be lower, because most of the exhaust gases which were hot have been removed from the combustion chamber. So everything cools down better, and it will lead to lower exhaust gas temperature. And then the reduced residual gas fraction helps in better combustion. Obviously these exhaust gases that are left at the end of the combustion, they are contaminant. I mean they affect the combustion adversely, and when you have lower quantity due to increased pressure, intake pressure, obviously you will have better combustion, you reduce temperature, and they improve the volumetric efficiency as well. Hot gases have higher volume for the same mass, so it reduces the volumetric efficiency. So these above mentioned effects are common for both petrol and diesel engines. So power output actually increases with turbocharging. You don't go beyond, see as I said, this is the ratio of supercharge. So you can say when I said, the boosting is never more than 1.52 bars. So you can see why it is not more than 1.5 to 2 bars, because then if you do more than that, then it becomes counterproductive, right. And this there is a good possibility that if you do boosting beyond 2 bar, you may end up damaging your engine, because boosting is almost like increasing the effective compression ratio of the engine, right. So this is going to affect the structural integrity of the engine as well. Sometimes there may be possibility of braking. What is the effect of supercharging on mechanical efficiency? So, an increasing supercharging pressure increases the gas load, and hence large bearing area and heavier components are required. Obviously, when you are boosting the engine, you are putting more amount of fuel. So, the peak firing pressures, rate of heat release, everything will be higher. So, when everything will be higher, everything has to be strong. The piston has to be strong, the connecting rod has to be strong, the bearings have to be strong, the crankshaft has to be strong, and this also increases the frictional loss. So, therefore, if in an unmodified engine, if you do not want to change the piston, connecting rod, anything, you should know what is your factor of safety. Okay. In the engine, we take reasonable amount of factor of safety, and when we boost the engine, we are still in the safe limits. But if you boost it beyond a certain level, there is a possibility that you may run beyond the factor of safety, and you may have warped connecting rod, you may have distorted crankshaft and connecting rod, and then you may have piston failure, piston may disintegrate, cylinder may disintegrate, head bolts may be snapped. So, many problems can happen if you boost your engine above 2 or 3 bar, above 2 bars. So, this certainly increases since the pressure increases in the cylinder, this increases the frictional loss as well, and however, the increase in BMEP is much more than the increase in frictional loss. So, BMEP means the power output is more. So, since the power output is more, although frictional loss is increased, but since the power output is more and that is what you want, you ignore. The problem that you have, deficit or negative aspect, is not overbearing on the positive aspect. Positive aspect is increase in BMEP or increase in power output. So, that is quite attractive. Okay. So, typical values of 11% to 7.5% in frictional loss for petrol and diesel engine by boosting, compared to 40% increase in BMEP. So, 40%, 50% more power you can generate, and frictional forces will increase by 10% or 15%, that is it. Okay. So, the mechanical efficiency of a supercharged engine therefore is slightly better than naturally aspirated engine. So, here this shows the engine speed in RPM, and here you have mechanical efficiency, and this is the BMEP. So, you can see that when the BMEP is low, engine is operating at low load, BMEP is this. As you keep on increasing the load, okay, your BMEP actually increases. So, something mechanical efficiency which was between 60% to 45% now increases to 90 to 75%. Okay. So, this is all that I have to talk about supercharging. If everything is clear, then we can move on to turbocharging. So, let us start turbocharging. So, turbocharging is nothing but it is also some kind of a supercharging device, but the only difference from supercharging is that it does not draw the power from the engine crankshaft, it draws the power from the hot exhaust gases. So, it is a charging device that uses the exhaust gases to turn the turbine that forces extra air into the cylinder, into the intake manifold. A turbocharger turbine looks more like a centrifugal pump. Okay, it is just like centrifugal pump, the only thing is that the flow direction is exactly reverse, and it does exactly the reverse thing. What does a centrifugal pump do? Centrifugal pump takes atmospheric pressure air, gives it kinetic energy, uses work, gives it kinetic energy, and what goes out is a high pressure, high temperature air. Temperature also increases. Why? Because the compression is taking place. Turbine does exactly the opposite of it. So, it takes high pressure, high temperature exhaust gas in, generates power, and let the low temperature, low pressure exhaust go out. So, it is just the reverse of it. And if you look at mechanical construction also, it is pretty much similar, except that the flow directions are just opposite of each other. Okay. So, a turbocharger looks much like a centrifugal pump, hot exhaust gases flow from the combustion chamber to the turbine. So, this is a typical turbocharger, okay. And please see, this is the compressor housing and this is the turbine housing, very compact, and both are connected by a shaft. So, that means when the exhaust gas goes in from here, rotates, first this diffuser will now act as a nozzle. So, whatever pressure and heat you have, it will increase the velocity of the exhaust gas, and then it passes through this impeller where again there is further expansion, okay, and it imparts the momentum, the gases, the kinetic energy of the exhaust gases is imparted to the impeller. So, the impeller start rotating and the shaft starts rotating, and this shaft is connected to the compressor, and this compressor impeller also starts rotating, and then air is going in from here. So, air, fresh air, so that is provided the kinetic energy, and then it goes out at a higher pressure. So, that is simple, that is the working mechanism, okay. So, it is not, so here you have to understand that it is not the speed or force of the exhaust gases, but it is the heat. Exhaust gases are hot, exhaust gases that are coming out of the engine are hot, their temperature could be as high as 250 to 650, 700, in case of SI engine it could be even 800 degrees centigrade. So, these are very hot gases, pressure may not be very high. So, these gases expand in the turbine stage, and then turbine will start rotating. So, the turbine's main advantage over a mechanical driven supercharger is that the turbine does not drain the power output from the shaft of the engine, okay. So, it is almost free of cost because exhaust gas was going waste anyway. You have used that energy to run your compressor, okay. So, it is a very positive aspect. So, this is just again one same cut section, you can see this is the compressor, and here you can see this is the impeller, and these are the diffuser, circular diffuser, okay, and this is the turbine, okay. So, exhaust is going in from here, and you can see these are nozzles, okay, and then the exhaust is passing through this component where it delivers, basically it delivers its momentum, the gases deliver its momentum, and then they go out and this starts rotating, this will in turn rotate this. So, the exhaust gas turbocharging is used as a means of improving the power to weight ratio and maximum torque of low to medium speed engines, and the turbocharger is a combination of two turbo elements, one is the exhaust gas turbine, the other one is centrifugal compressor. Now, this is something that I would like to draw your attention to this. This is the installation of a turbocharger on a typical engine. It is a spark ignition engine, as you can see. This is the piston, this is the spark plug, this is the intake air, this is the exhaust gas, okay, and this is the exhaust manifold. So, here you have a waste gate. I will explain what that waste gate is, but just for the time being understand it is a waste gate, and waste gate actually bypasses some of the exhaust, okay. So, it bypasses some of the exhaust when required, otherwise in normal condition it will remain closed. So, when it remains closed, all the exhaust will pass through this turbine, okay, and go out, okay, and ultimately waste gate and turbine both will exit into the same exhaust pipe. This will start rotating, and then you see the intake air is taken in from the atmosphere. Obviously, before this point you will have a filter, you do not want the particles to enter. So, the intake air comes, obviously this is rotating, so power is coming from here which is generated by the turbine. The compression will happen, and because the compression, the pressure and temperature both will increase. Now, when you have high temperature air going into your system, volumetric efficiency will reduce. So, you do not want hot air to go in, you would like to cool it so that your volumetric efficiency increases. So, this high pressure, high temperature passes through some kind of a cooling device, intercooler or some device. You can see some fins here. Okay, so this is high pressure. Now it is room temperature, high pressure air. Then it passes through a very special type of carburetor. If it is a carburetor, then it is a very special carburetor which can withstand high pressure, okay, which works in high pressure. Or nowadays, nobody uses carburetor, especially for four-wheeler applications. So this thing is gone. In its place, you have port fuel injector. So anyway, that fuel air mixture comes in, and then so this is how it is installed. Okay. So another view, you can see the air exhaust gas entering, rotating through the turbine and going out axially, ambient air entering axially, rotating, and high pressure going out. So here you take the air in, and then you have to pass it through some kind of a charge cooler in order to reduce its temperature. Rest of the things I have already explained to you. The compressor also raises the gas temperature, and therefore after cooler or some kind of intercoolers are required. Basically some kind of a heat exchanger where without changing the pressure you are removing the heat and cooling the intake air. Okay, so after the compressor to drop the temperature, and therefore this will help you increase the density. Now you see, if you are using turbocharger or you are using supercharger, which one will be having fast response? Why? Obviously supercharger will have a fast response because it is connected to crankshaft. Okay. So the moment you demand, engine will start rotating fast and boost will be provided almost instantaneously because it is bolted on. In turbine what happens? In turbocharger, engine will start rotating fast. You give demand, you put in more fuel, there may not be enough air to begin with. So it will try to catch up. There will be more exhaust which will be hotter, it will go to the turbine. Turbine will start rotating faster, it will then lead to more boost in the compressor, more pressure generation, passes through the intercooler and then comes. So for this difference, the pressure wave, it takes time, there is a circuit. So during this time you are putting more amount of fuel and there is not enough air. So there is a lag in the response, okay, and this creates a big problem. This is called turbo lag. Okay, I will explain, this is very interesting. So this is on the y axis you have demand and on the x axis you have time. Suppose this is you are operating here and suddenly you say, okay, I want 20% extra power. So you give a linear throttle up, okay, you give a linear throttle up and you wait. So this is your expectation and this is the response. Okay. So you have a delay, you want this power level here, but you got it here. So that means this time, this is the delay in response of the engine. Therefore it is called, and it is because of the turbocharger, and this is called turbo lag. Okay. At the start of the acceleration, low exhaust gas temperature and flow rates, the inertia of the turbocharger contributes to slow build-up of the pressure. As soon as you have more exhaust going, the turbine will take its time to increase the speed, rotational speed, and build pressure, and that is what creates this turbo lag. Turbo lag is delay between the instant a car's accelerator is pressed and the time the turbocharged engine develop a large fraction of the power available at that point on engine's power curve. So basically turbo lag is nothing but the time delay between the moment the demand is placed and the moment the demand is met. by the engine. That is called turbo lag. I am sure you must have all travelled by train, and I am sure all of you must have noticed that when a diesel engine comes into the platform, and sometimes when it falls short and the driver tries to put the pedal, and then you see a large black smoke plume rising from the locomotive and you feel how bad it is. Have you seen that scenario? Most of the time it happens. Why does it happen? Because of the turbo lag. And the moment the driver keeps on pressing, in 20-30 seconds that plume vanishes. After that it is just clean. It is because of the turbo lag. That's the time when, suppose the locomotive driver, he pulls the notch, that means he start giving more amount of fuel. So there is not enough air, and the gases, the hot gases also take time to reach the turbine. Turbine takes its own sweet time to accelerate and increase its velocity, its rotational speed, and then again the intake air has to be supplied back to the engine. All this circuit is 20-30 seconds in locomotive, and this is called turbo lag, because even the turbine and compressor, they have their own inertia, right. So it is just one example. It does not happen in case of supercharged engine. Turbo lag is symptomatic of time taken by the exhaust system driving the turbine to come to high pressure and for the turbine rotor to overcome its rotational inertia and reach the speed necessary to supply the boost pressure. This lag can be reduced by lowering the rotational inertia of the system. So how can you handle? Simple thing, instead of having such a big turbine, you have two smaller turbines. The lower mass you have, lower will be the inertia. So you can have low inertia engines, more number. So this lag can be reduced by use of multiple turbochargers. Okay, but multiple turbochargers also have their own problems, because earlier you have to maintain only one turbocharger, now you have to maintain two. So nothing is free, everything has some flip side. Now let us look at overloading of the engine by the turbocharger. So you see we have defined the boost, and boost is the pressure above the atmospheric pressure, right, that is coming out of the compressor. Now under some conditions you may not require very high boost. Boost will depend on the engine's operating condition. In some condition you may require 0.2 bar boost, in some conditions you may require 0.4 bar boost, in some conditions you may require 0.6 bar boost, right. So since you need variable boost, you need some mechanism by which you can control it effectively. Okay. So the process of controlling the maximum boost pressure of a turbocharger is known as boost control. The question comes, why the boost control is essential, why it is required. So first is that I told you that boosting essentially means increasing the effective compression ratio of the engine. And now you remember, in the context of spark ignition engine, if you have high compression ratio, what can happen? Knocking can happen, right. So higher compression of fuel air mixture may lead to knocking in SI engines. Okay. So that means it will require that you want boost, but not at the level where the engine will start knocking. Okay. Higher compression power may damage the engine. Why it may damage the engine? If your boost is out of control, your engine is designed such that the peak cylinder pressure is tolerable, say 90 bar, and you operate your engine at say 70 bar naturally aspirated. So now you have only a gap of 20 bar, and you should choose the boost accordingly, and by mistake you choose double the boost. So now instead of 70 to 90 you jump to 110, then what will happen? piston will break, connecting rod may completely get twisted, or anything can happen. So, physical integrity of the engine can actually be compromised. So, high compression ratio or high compression power may physically damage the engine. Then engine needs to be able to generate high torque even at low speeds. I told you that we need high torque at low speed is extremely important. So, the turbochargers are designed for low exhaust gas mass flow rate. So, at low speeds you have low mass flow rate because the engine is rotating slow. So, you would like to give, if you want to look at this particular factor, you design your turbocharger such that it is able to work at low exhaust gas mass flow rate as well. Okay. So, to prevent and then if it is designed for this, and suppose you use the same turbocharger for high speed, so it will generate too much of boost, and therefore you need to control it. Are you getting me or not? So, to prevent the turbocharger from overloading the engine at high exhaust gas mass flow rate, turbocharger pressure has to be controlled. So, because of all these factors, it is important that you control the boost. Now, you see there are two things, one is a turbine and one is a compressor, and these are connected by one shaft. And your objective is that the turbine boost should, the compressor boost should be reduced. So, what can you do? What are your options? One option is that this exhaust gas that is coming in, I allow some exhaust gas not to pass through the turbine, I bypass it. That is one option. The other one is that I allow all the exhaust to pass through it, let it rotate at whatever speed it is rotating, and let the compressor generate all the pressure it has, and then I do not allow all the pressure to go into my intake. I allow only required, and rest I send back to the atmosphere. And this I can do for a diesel engine. If I am compressing air fuel mixture, I cannot do that in case of a SI engine, right. So, these are on a very high level, these are the two main options you have, and for these you have some devices that you can use for boost control. Boost control is extremely important. Without boost control, there is no point in having turbocharged system in an engine. So, 4 turbocharger designs are used for this purpose, or 4 devices could be used for this purpose. One is the wastegate turbocharger. I will tell you what the wastegate is. I mentioned earlier also that there is a wastegate. Then there is a blow off valve turbocharger, blow off valve, okay. And there is a variable turbine geometry and there is a variable sleeve geometry, VTG and VST turbochargers. Okay, out of these two, first 3 are most important. What is wastegate turbocharger? So, the wastegate turbocharger is, this is the compressor and this is the turbine. What the wastegate does is that it bypasses some of the exhaust. This is the entry of the exhaust gas. It bypasses some of the exhaust and puts in the exhaust pipe. So, it does not allow all the exhaust to pass through the turbine. So, since it does not allow all the exhaust to pass through the turbine, that means the turbine speed will now reduce, and therefore your boost will also reduce, or you can control it. Okay? And how do you achieve that? So, basically this is the wastegate, very interesting system, very simple system. This is a wastegate, there is a spring here, okay, and there is a pipe which is connected from the outlet of compressor, and this is connected here. Suppose this boost increases beyond a certain level, so the pressure here will increase beyond a certain level. This disc is fixed. So, when the pressure here will increase, then what will happen? This piston will move this side, and when this piston moves this side, this hole will be uncovered, and when this hole is uncovered, see, the exhaust gas would like to pass through the path of least resistance. There is a resistance here in the turbine. So, therefore, it would like to pass through the path of least resistance. So, depending on how much this hole is opening, that much amount of exhaust gas will bypass. If the pressure is too high, this will be pressed more and more and more and more gate will open. The moment this turbocharger speed, turbine speed reduces, then boost will also reduce. So, this pressure will reduce and therefore, this pressure will reduce and spring will push it back and close it. So, this is automatic system, isn't it smart? So, this is how it works. Okay. This is another example, but same thing, same wastegate, just another cross section. This is more of a schematic, this is a cut section. So, air is coming in, this is the compressor. Okay. From here you have taken a line, okay, and there is a spring and some kind of mechanism. This is wastegate. So, when this pressure is more, what you do is you open this device. So, when you open this device, part of the exhaust actually bypasses. You can see these arrows. So, that are showing that the exhaust is bypassed. When this pressure falls, so now the turbine speed will reduce, the compressor speed will reduce, this pressure will fall. And when this pressure will fall, this will close. So, more all the exhaust will pass through the turbine. Okay. So, wastegate is a valve that divert exhaust gases away from the turbine wheel in a turbocharged engine system. Diversion of the exhaust gases regulates the turbine speed, which in turn regulates the speed of the compressor. And the primary function of the wastegate is to regulate the maximum boost pressure in the turbocharged system to protect the engine and the turbocharger. Okay. So, this the function is to control maximum boost. So, this is like a safety device. Okay. At higher engine speeds or load, part of the exhaust gas is diverted by a bypass valve called the wastegate, and you can see it here. This is the wastegate. This is just another example schematic. This is the compressor, this is the turbine, turbine is passing through it, and this is the valve here. The moment this experiences higher pressure here, this valve opens, part of the exhaust gases go out. This reduces the exhaust gases from passing through the turbine and lowers the exhaust gas back pressure, preventing excessive turbocharger speed. At low engine speeds and loads, the wastegate closes and entire exhaust gas pass through drive. So, whenever there is low speed, you completely close it. So, entire exhaust gas will pass through this and generate sufficient boost. At high speeds, this will open and some of the exhaust is bypassed, so that boost is controlled. That is how it works. Blow off valve. So, this is blow off valve is this, and it is a very simple device. You know, for example, you are taking air cleaner, the air is clean, passes through a turbocharger, and then compressed air is going through this blow off valve. So, blow off valve is nothing but a spring loaded safety valve. Whenever the pressure exceeds a particular level, this will blow off the air into the atmosphere. Okay. So, a blow off valve affects the flow of compressed air. So, this is, so the wastegate operates on the exhaust gas, the blow off valve operates on the intake air. So, this affects the compressed air between the turbocharger and the engine. If the valve is to, if it is the valve to control the maximum boost pressure, then it is a simple spring loaded unit. When the boost pressure reaches a certain level, the spring tension is overcome and some of the boost pressure is allowed to escape. If the turbocharger is compressing the combustible mixture, suppose you are having a carburetor here, okay, and you are compressing a fuel air mixture, then you can't allow this to be vented into the atmosphere. So, then you have to put it back into the intake. So, if you are compressing a combustible air fuel mixture, then the mixture must be vented back into the inlet of the turbocharger. So, this you have to make sure. If it is just a diesel engine or if you are just compressing the air, then you do not care to take that air back. Okay, it is free of cost, but if it is taking fuel along with it, then it is not free. You have to plow it back into the system. Okay. So, this is how typically a waste blow off valve looks like. So, blow off valve, also called diverter or bypass valves, all work by detecting this vacuum. Having done so, they use vacuum to mechanically open a valve in order to relieve unnecessary boost from the other side of the throttle plate, and this is common to high performance application where it provides the least compromise. They basically release the pressure straight into the atmosphere. This mechanism works because only on the other side of the throttle plate vacuum gets built to the in the intake manifold. So, there is a spring, there is a diaphragm, and there is a plunger. Okay, so this is connected to manifold. Whenever the manifold pressure is high, this plunger is lifted against the force of the spring, and then it goes to the dump tube into the atmosphere. All right, I think I will just, this is the last thing that I want to talk today. This is about the variable geometry turbocharger. So, variable geometry turbocharger technology is the next generation turbocharger technology. So, these two are more old generation and have been used for a very, very long time. VGT is a new technology, okay, where the turbo uses variable vanes to control the exhaust flow against the turbine blades, okay. I will explain this to you what this is. So, this is a turbocharger equipped with VTG, variable turbine geometry, has little movable vanes. So, they have little very small vanes which you can control and then change the direction, which direct the flow of the exhaust gas onto the turbine blades. The vane angles are actuated by actuators. The angle of the vane varies throughout the engine RPM range to optimize the turbocharger behavior. So, even as I said, at different speeds and load conditions, the requirement of the boost is different. So, this can be tackled by this technology. A variable turbine geometry turbocharger is known as variable geometry turbocharger or variable nozzle turbocharger, and this is how it looks like. So, you can see these are the little vanes which can change its angle. I will explain what this is. So, you see this will explain, so these are the vanes actually, okay. So, these are the two figures. One is figure A is deflector blade setting for high turbocharger pressure. So, whenever the turbocharger pressure is high, you make them straight. So, the air now has to go through it, and angle of attack actually is different, So, now the rotational speed of the engine will be reduced. So, the boost will be lower, and when the flow rate is less, at that time you want more boost. So, at that time you adjust it such that the angle of attack is at 90 degree to the blades. That is when they transfer the momentum maximum. So, in this condition it is not 90 degree, the relative angle of attack is less, and therefore, the rotational speed of the turbine will be lower. In this condition it is 90 degree, okay. So, the deflector blade setting for the low pressure is like this. So, air comes in and attacks it at 90 degree, and it will generate more boost, clear. So, by altering the geometry of the turbine housing as the engine accelerates, the turbo's aspect ratio can be maintained to its optimum. Because of this, VGT has a minimum amount of lag, okay. So, this does not have very high lag, they have a low boost threshold and are very efficient at higher engine speed. In many cases, VGT configurations do not even require a safety of a wastegate, okay. However, this depends on whether the fully open position is sufficiently open to allow boost to be controlled at desired level at all times. Some VGT implementations have been known to overboost if wastegate is not fitted. So, it is therefore essential that even if you are going for VGT, you put a wastegate, okay. So, this has two operational modes, one is at low speeds, the other one at high speeds. So, at low speeds, vanes are partly closed, accelerating the exhaust gas flow. Exhaust gas flow hits the turbine at right angle, and both makes the turbine spin faster, and narrow passage of which the exhaust gas has to flow through accelerates the exhaust gas towards the turbine blade, making them spin faster. The angle of the vanes also direct the gas to hit the blade at proper angle, and that is when you can generate very high level of boosting. At high speeds, vanes are fully open to take advantage of high exhaust flow, and they also release exhaust pressure in the turbocharger, saving the need for a wastegate. Okay, I think I will stop here today, and tomorrow I will discuss the power and torque characteristics and some other details of the turbocharger. Okay. Thank you very much.